So a standard winter beanie, it can actually survive like easily 100 trips through a heavy-duty commercial washing machine.
Oh, yeah. They're incredibly tough.
Right. It's this resilient, super tough piece of gear that's built for the absolute worst elements. But the custom logo you decide to put on that beanie, that's a totally different story.
Completely different. That's where things fall apart.
Exactly. Because if you choose the wrong method, that logo might start, cracking or peeling or just fading by like wash number 40.
Yeah, and then the hat looks terrible.
Right. So today, we're really looking at the sort of invisible math behind outfitting your team. You're a decision maker. You're managing a budget, outfitting a crew, and you're just staring at a screen trying to answer this deceptively complex question.
Which is basically, how do you get your brand onto a knit winter hat in a way that actually lasts?
Exactly. We want a straight expert answer. No sales pitch, just the facts. We're going to look strictly at the mechanics, the supply chain reality, and the really deep physical differences between a directly embroidered beanie versus a patch beanie.
It's a huge decision for a business.
It really is. And right off the bat, quick honesty, this show is made by the team at Arklavo, so this is our genuine take, and you can weigh it for what it is.
Yeah, we just want to lay all the cards on the table.
For sure. So our mission today is to completely demystify this choice. We want you to be able to make a strategic decision for your operations, completely free from, like, the standard marketing jargon.
And it's a vital conversation because, well, as business operators, I think we often fall into this trap. We think of apparel as just a line item on an invoice.
Oh, totally. You buy the hats, you hand them out, you move on with your day.
Exactly. But that beanie is a functional piece of equipment. It actually has to perform. So when you're deciding how to decorate it, you're making this massive structural choice.
A choice about, like, material science.
Yes, material science, supply chain efficiency, and honestly, how your corporate identity survives out in the wild. I mean, think about it. A beanie worn by an electrical lineman in freezing rain
Oh, man. Yeah.
undergoes a completely different stress test than a beanie worn by a barista in a nice climate-controlled cafe.
That's a great point. If you don't understand the mechanical reality of how these logos are actually built, you're essentially just, gambling with your uniform budget.
You're throwing money away.
I think a lot of buyers just look at a digital mock-up, they point to the one that looks coolest, and they hit order.
That happens all the time.
But there's this massive physical difference in how these items are actually built on the factory floor. So let's just get right into the anatomy.
Let's do it.
We're going to break down the physical engineering of these two methods, and I want to start with direct embroidery. Because when people hear custom hat, direct embroidery is like the default assumption.
Right, it's the classic.
But what is actually happening at a microscopic level when a beanie gets directly embroidered?
Okay, so to understand direct embroidery, you really have to look at how a commercial embroidery machine interacts with the fabric. And we are not talking about, a little sewing machine you have sitting on your kitchen table.
No, these are beasts.
Right. These are massive multi-head industrial machines. They run at speeds of up to 1,000 stitches per minute.
Wow.
Yeah. So when a beanie is directly embroidered, the operator secures it into this specialized hoop. It's called a cap frame. And this frame holds the knit fabric incredibly taut.
Like a drum.
Exactly like a drum. Then the machine drives these specialized polyester or rayon threads straight through the knit of the beanie itself.
So there's no backing or anything?
No backing material is added to the outside front. There's no separate piece of fabric. The needle literally penetrates the yarn of the hat. It intertwines your logo's thread directly into the structural weave of the garment itself.
Wait, okay. But if the needle is violently punching through the knit of the beanie over and over, and we're talking sometimes thousands of times for a single logo, doesn't that ruin the stretchiness of the hat?
That's a really valid concern.
Because you're essentially taking this nice stretchy piece of winter gear and turning the forehead into this rigid thread-locked block.
That is a brilliant point, and it highlights exactly why commercial embroidery is so technically demanding.
Yeah.
Because if you pack too many stitches into a concentrated area, what we call stitch density in the industry, you do exactly what you just described.
You make a bulletproof shield.
Right, a bulletproof shield right on the front of the hat. The fabric puckers, it warps, and it completely loses all its elasticity. It's ruined.
So how do they stop that from happening?
They use a highly specialized skill called digitizing. Now, digitizing is not just, scanning your logo into a computer and pressing print.
It's not just a copy-paste job.
Not at all. A human technician, or sometimes a highly advanced algorithm, has to map the exact microscopic path of the needle.
Oh, wow. Like planning a route.
Exactly. They have to decide where to place what's called an underlay stitch, which stabilizes the fabric first, and then they decide where to use a satin stitch for a really crisp border versus a fill stitch for a large block of solid color.
So the digitizer is actually compensating for the physical properties of the specific beanie.
Yes, they have to program something called push and pull compensation.
Push and pull compensation. Okay, what is that?
Well, because a beanie is a knit fabric, it's inherently unstable, right? It stretches. So as the needle drives the thread in, it literally pushes the fabric outward in one direction and pulls it inward in the other.
Oh, I see.
If the digitizer does not mathematically account for that specific stretch before the machine ever turns on, your perfectly circular logo is going to come out looking like a squashed egg.
That is wild.
Oh.
That completely changes how I view those clean, crisp logos. The thread is literally becoming a structural part of the hat. It's fighting against the natural stretch of the fabric.
It's an engineering marvel, really.
It makes me think of a tattoo.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, because the ink doesn't just sit on your skin, right? It's injected into the dermis. It moves when your skin moves. It stretches when you stretch. It's fundamentally integrated. So direct embroidery is essentially tattooing the fabric.
The tattoo analogy is perfect. The logo sits entirely flush with the textured surface of the beanie. It even absorbs some of the character and texture of the knit.
Right.
But, and this is important, that integration comes with a severe technical limitation.
Which is?
Because you're using physical needles and thick polyester thread to build the image, you are bound by the laws of physics.
Sure.
Direct embroidery cannot render photographic detail. It just can't. It can't do fine, smooth color gradients. You can't, like, fade a dark blue thread seamlessly into a light blue thread.
Because it's not a printer, it's physical string.
Exactly. The digitizer has to simplify those really complex designs into distinct, solid blocks of color. Furthermore, you cannot do microscopic text.
Oh, right, because the thread has thickness.
Yeah, a needle can only get so thin before it snaps under the pressure, and thread can only get so fine. If you have a logo with tiny, delicate, hairline serif fonts, direct embroidery is just going to turn those letters into illegible, blurry blobs.
Okay, which naturally brings us to the alternative.
Yeah.
If direct embroidery is the tattoo, integrated, permanent, but limited in microscopic detail, then the patch is like applying a high-quality specialized badge on top of the skin.
Right. It's a completely different approach.
A patch is a totally separate secondary component. Like, it's manufactured completely independent of the beanie, probably in a different facility or on a completely different machine, and then it is attached later.
Yes, the physical profile of a patch is entirely different. Because it's a secondary element that's attached to the front of the hat, it sits above the knit, it creates this raised three-dimensional border.
It pops out at you.
Exactly. You are introducing a brand new layer of material. And this is where decision makers have a massive amount of flexibility because, well, not all patches are created equal.
Right. Our sources detail 3 main variations here, and they each solve very different problems. Let's start with the first one. The traditional embroidered patch.
Sure.
So how does an embroidered patch differ from direct embroidery mechanically, aside from the obvious fact that it's a separate piece?
Well, the mechanism of the thread is actually the same. You still have a needle punching thread into a substrate, but the substrate is different.
Okay.
Instead of embroidering directly into the unstable, stretchy knit of a beanie, the machine embroiders your logo onto a rigid, very stable piece of twill or canvas backing.
Oh, so the canvas doesn't stretch.
Exactly. Because the backing doesn't stretch, the digitizer can achieve a slightly crisper edge and a higher stitch density without warping the material.
So they can pack more thread in there.
Yep. Once the logo is stitched onto that twill, it's cut out, usually finished with a really thick border called a marrowed edge, and then applied to the hat. It gives you that classic, slightly elevated, varsity letter feel.
I know exactly what you mean. But wait, if I have that super intricate logo we talked about earlier, the one with the delicate serif fonts that direct embroidery would ruin, an embroidered patch still uses thick thread. It doesn't really solve my detail problem, does it?
Precisely. And that is exactly why the second variation exists, the woven patch.
Ah, okay. Woven patches.
If an embroidered patch is made by punching thread through a piece of fabric, a woven patch is made by weaving the fabric itself from scratch on a jacquard loom.
Weaving it from scratch.
Yes. The threads used in a woven patch are microscopic compared to standard embroidery thread. We are talking about ultra-fine denier polyester. The loom weaves the background and the logo simultaneously.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It interlocks the warp and weft threads to create a single, perfectly smooth, flat surface.
So it's essentially acting like a high-definition screen. Because the pixels, or, in this case, the threads, are so much smaller, you can get incredibly sharp resolution.
That is the exact mechanical advantage. If you have a highly illustrative logo or really intricate line work or very small text, the woven patch captures it with absolute fidelity.
It's the floor.
Right. And the surface has almost no heavy texture. It feels almost like a smooth piece of taffeta.
Yeah.
It is precise and incredibly clean.
And then we have the third major player in the patch world, which basically abandons thread entirely for the main logo design, and that's the leather patch.
Leather patches change the structural dynamic completely. You're taking a piece of genuine cowhide or maybe a high-quality synthetic polyurethane alternative and manipulating its surface.
How do they get the logo on there?
Well, the factory either uses a high-powered laser to burn your logo precisely into the material, which is laser engraving, or they use a heated metal die to stamp the logo under immense pressure, which is called debossing.
That sounds intense.
It creates a highly tactile structural element. The leather is thick, it has weight, and it introduces an entirely new material texture to the soft knit of the winter hat.
So we have the mechanical baseline here. Direct embroidery is the tattoo. The thread is driven straight into the stretchy knit, becoming one with the hat, limited by thread thickness, but physically integrated.
Yep, the tattoo.
And the patch is the secondary badge, manufactured separately for higher detail or different textures, and then attached. But here is the critical pivot for a business operator listening to this.
This is the important part.
Because understanding the anatomy is great, sure, but a beanie on a construction site or a beanie worn by a landscaper in a torrential downpour is not sitting in a museum display case.
No, it is not.
It is going to face dirt, sweat, UV exposure, constant stretching, and the absolute brutal environment of a commercial washing machine.
So how do these different constructions actually survive when they are deployed in the real world? Let's talk about the durability test.
To really understand durability, we have to look at the physics of a commercial wash cycle.
Okay, let's break it down. When an employee throws their uniform beanie into the laundry, it is subjected to 3 distinct forces. First, chemical breakdown from harsh enzyme detergents.
Right. The soap.
Second, thermal shock from hot water and high-heat commercial dryers. And third, immense mechanical friction from the agitator inside the drum.
It's basically a war zone in there.
It is. We have to measure how our decoration methods survive that gauntlet. And just to set a baseline for this, let's look at printed decoration really quickly. Your sources note that screen printing or heat transfer printing on fabric typically begins to fail between 40 and 60 washes.
Wait, 40 to 60? Why does print fail so quickly compared to thread? Wait, I see printed t-shirts all the time and they seem fine.
It comes down to thermal expansion and mechanical stretch. You see, screen printing relies on plastisol ink, which is essentially just a liquid plastic.
Okay.
The ink is pushed through a mesh screen, and it sits entirely on top of the fabric fibers. Then it's cured with heat to solidify it. But here is the major problem. Plastisol ink does not stretch at the same rate as the knit fabric of a beanie.
Oh, I see where this is going.
When the wearer pulls the beanie over their head, the knit fabric expands. But the solid sheet of plastic ink tries to stretch with it, and it microcracks.
It freshers.
Yes. And over time, as those microcracks are agitated in a washing machine, the ink begins to flake, peel, and fade. A beanie requires immense horizontal stretch, making it a terrible candidate for rigid surface inks.
That makes total sense. You are basically bonding a rigid plastic to a highly elastic surface. The bond is eventually going to break. And honestly, it looks terrible when a team is walking around with half a logo flaking off their forehead.
It looks cheap.
Yeah, it completely undermines the professionalism of the brand.
Exactly. And this is where the physical integration of direct embroidery proves its absolute dominance. Direct embroidery routinely survives well over 100 wash cycles without any visible degradation.
Over 100.
Yes, it is the undisputed gold standard for daily punishing wear and tear.
And mechanically, why does it survive the wash so much better than print? Just because it's thread.
Because of the material and the integration. First, commercial embroidery uses highly durable polyester thread. Polyester is inherently color fast, meaning it resists bleaching and UV fading far better than cotton or ink.
It's basically plastic strain.
It's a synthetic polymer that is incredibly tough. But second, and more importantly, think back to your tattoo analogy. Because the thread is driven directly into the knit, it weaves between the yarns of the hat. It is securely anchored into the structure.
So it moves with it.
When the beanie stretches, the embroidered logo flexes and moves alongside the knit. It is not a solid sheet sitting on top. It is a matrix of thousands of individual threads moving dynamically with the fabric.
And there's no edge.
That is the key insight. There is no exposed edge. There's no corner to catch on a stray branch if you were working in forestry. There is no rigid boundary for the agitator in a washing machine to grab onto and rip.
Wow.
The logo is a continuous part of the hat itself. It is virtually frictionless.
Okay, so direct embroidery is the heavyweight champion of longevity because it has no edges. Where does that leave our patches? We know patches are secondary components that sit on top of the hat. Does that mean they just fall apart?
No, patches are still highly durable, landing much closer to the embroidery end of the spectrum than the printed end.
Okay, good to know.
The patch itself, like the woven polyester threads or the embroidered twill, will last for years. The thread on a patch is just as tough as the thread used in direct embroidery. However, patches introduce a structural vulnerability that direct embroidery simply does not have.
Well, what's that?
The perimeter attachment seam.
Right, because no matter how tough the patch itself is, it still has to be glued or sewn onto the beanie somehow.
Exactly. Let's look at how they are actually attached. Some patches are applied using an industrial heat press. The back of the patch is coated with a thermal polyurethane adhesive.
So high-tech glue.
Right. The press applies 300 degrees of heat and immense pressure to melt that glue directly into the knit of the beanie. Other patches are physically sewn onto the hat with a needle running a stitch entirely around the outer border of the patch. But in both cases, you have created a hard perimeter.
And that perimeter is the weak point.
It is the single point of failure. If you are doing heavy manual labor and a corner of that patch catches on a piece of equipment, it experiences localized shear force.
It gets yanked.
Yep. If you wash the beanie 50 times, the friction of the drum is constantly rubbing against that raised border. Over time, a thread on the seam can snap, or the thermal adhesive can begin to degrade from the extreme heat of the dryer.
And once it starts...
Once that perimeter is compromised, once even a tiny corner starts to lift, the structural integrity of the entire patch is threatened. It just becomes a flap that will eventually tear completely off.
I see. So it is not that the logo itself degrades, it is that the mounting system degrades.
Precisely.
And what about those high-end leather patches? Because leather is an incredibly tough material. I mean, a good leather belt lasts a lifetime.
Leather is phenomenally durable against abrasion and tearing, yes, but it has a massive specific weakness when it comes to apparel.
Let me guess. The washing machine.
Modern laundering chemistry. Traditional thread is synthetic. It really doesn't care about water or detergent. But leather is organic. It relies on natural oils to remain supple.
Oh, no.
If you repeatedly subject a genuine leather patch to a heavy-duty cycle with harsh alkaline detergents, you strip all those natural oils out.
So it dries out completely.
And if you follow that with a high-heat tumble dry, the leather undergoes rapid thermal contraction. It will warp, it will stiffen, the edges will curl, and that beautiful debossed logo can lose all its depth. Over time, it can crack.
Yikes. What about fake leather?
Even synthetic leather, which does handle water better, can delaminate under high heat. Leather patches are incredibly tough against the outdoor elements, but they are fragile in the laundry room.
So as a business operator, I have to map the physical reality of the decoration method directly to the daily reality of my workforce.
That is the crucial step.
If both thread-based methods, direct embroidery and woven patches outlast screen printing by miles, is the seam vulnerability of a patch really a deal breaker? Or is it just like a context clue?
It's a context clue.
Right, because if I'm outfitting a landscaping crew that deals with mud, sweat, and heavy machinery, and they need to wash their gear on heavy duty twice a week, I am putting them in direct embroidery.
Without a doubt.
The frictionless integrated tattoo is the only thing that will survive that. But if I am outfitting a team of software developers who are just going to wear the beanie during their commute and maybe wash it once a month on a delicate cycle, the edge vulnerability of a woven patch is basically irrelevant. It will last just fine.
That is the exact calculus every buyer needs to make. Context is absolutely everything. You cannot evaluate durability in a vacuum. You have to design the garment for the actual utility of the person wearing it.
Makes total sense. But durability is only one side of the coin, right? Durability proves the physical value of the hat over a 2-year lifespan. It tells you how long the garment will represent your brand well. But let's look at the immediate business reality. Durability does not matter at all if the manufacturing method blows up your quarterly budget before the hats even ship.
Very true.
Or if the production timeline misses the deadline for your massive winter marketing launch. We have to look at the supply chain. How do these anatomical differences, the one-step tattoo versus the two-step badge, actually translate into the economics of a custom order? Let's break down cost, time, and manufacturing complexity.
This is where understanding the factory floor pays massive dividends for a decision maker. Let's look at the core cost mechanics first.
Okay.
Direct embroidery is a heavily streamlined, single-step manufacturing process. The supply chain is relatively simple. The decorator takes the blank beanie out of the box, they secure it to the cap frame, the digital file is sent to the machine, the needles fire, the logo is integrated, the hat is taken off the hoop, and it goes straight into the shipping box.
Wow. One touch point.
One touch point, one location. Because of this extreme efficiency, the cost of the decoration labor is bundled directly into the overall production of that single garment.
So the machine really does all the heavy lifting, and it happens in one continuous motion.
Precisely. The primary variable cost is just the amount of time the machine runs, which is dictated by your stitch count. A simple 5,000 stitch logo will naturally cost less and run faster than a dense 15,000 stitch logo, but the physical handling is minimal.
Now, if I look at a patch, I'm guessing the supply chain is far more fragmented.
It is fundamentally a two-stage process, and it often involves two entirely different factories.
Really?
Stage 1 is manufacturing the patch itself. This requires its own dedicated setup. A factory has to program the jacquard loom for a woven patch or create a physical metal die to stamp a leather patch. They manufacture the patches in bulk.
Okay, so that's stage 1.
Stage 2 is applying the patch. The finished patches are shipped to the apparel decorator. Then, a human worker has to take the blank beanie, perfectly center the patch using a laser alignment tool or a physical jig, and either operate a commercial heat press for 30 seconds per hat, or sit at an industrial sewing machine and manually stitch the entire perimeter.
So you have introduced a second, highly specific, labor-intensive manufacturing event.
Yes.
And inherently, anytime you add a second human touch point to an assembly line, you're driving up the per unit cost.
Exactly.
I think there is a massive misconception in the business world regarding this. I talk to buyers all the time who assume a patch would actually be cheaper.
They do.
They think, oh, we're just slapping a pre-made patch on the front. It must be the budget option compared to custom embroidery. But because you are paying for two completely distinct manufacturing life cycles, making the patch and then applying the patch, you're actually paying for two labor steps.
That slapped-on aesthetic is actually an engineered, multi-step premium look. And this two-step reality dramatically impacts how costs scale based on the size of your order. Let's talk about the amortization of fixed costs.
Ooh, okay, let's do the math.
If you are doing a small team order, say you have a plumbing company, and you only need 20 beanies for your crew. For direct embroidery, the only fixed setup cost is the digitizing fee to convert your logo into a stitch file. That fee is spread across the 20 hats, adding maybe a couple of dollars per unit. The machine just runs 20 times.
Simple enough. But for patches, the math is brutal on a small order, right?
Brutal, because to make 20 leather patches, the factory still has to physically machine the custom metal stamping die. To make 20 woven patches, they still have to set up the jacquard loom. Those physical setup costs are substantial.
And you're dividing that huge cost by 20.
If you divide a massive loom setup fee across only 20 beanies, your per garment cost skyrockets. The fixed costs hit a small run incredibly hard. That is why many patch suppliers demand high minimum order quantities. They simply cannot turn on the loom for 20 hats.
But if I am a massive retail brand and I am ordering 5,000 beanies for a nationwide rollout, the math changes entirely, right?
Economies of scale kick in aggressively for patches. If you order 5,000 woven patches, that initial loom setup fee is divided by 5,000. It becomes fractions of a penny per patch.
Wow.
Furthermore, weaving patches in bulk is incredibly fast. Once the patches are made, the application process, while manual, can be done very efficiently on an assembly line. For massive retail runs, the per-unit cost difference between direct embroidery and a patch narrows considerably, and sometimes a bulk patch order can even become more cost-effective depending on the complexity of the design.
That makes a lot of sense, but I would assume that this two-stage supply chain also creates a massive vulnerability when it comes to turnaround time.
It absolutely does.
If I am managing an event, say a corporate retreat in the mountains that starts in exactly 2 weeks, which method gives me the highest probability of actually having the boxes arrive on time?
It is a direct correlation to the complexity of the supply chain. Because direct embroidery is a single-step, single-facility production process, it is vastly superior for speed and reliability. The moment you approve the digital proof, the blank hats can be pulled from the warehouse, loaded onto the machines, stitched and shipped out in a matter of days. The entire life cycle happens under one roof.
Whereas the patch process is basically a logistical relay race.
Precisely. The two-stage patch process requires significant lead time. First, you have to wait for the patches to be physically created, which often happens at a specialized facility, sometimes even overseas.
Right.
Then you have to wait for those patches to clear customs, be shipped to the decorator's facility, be unpacked, inspected, and moved to the application assembly line. Only then does the second stage of labor begin.
There are so many places for things to go wrong.
If there is a delay in the freight of the patches, your entire timeline is destroyed. If you have a hard, non-negotiable deadline, the single-step efficiency of direct embroidery is your safest, most reliable bet.
Okay, this is a perfect point to sort of pause and map out the battlefield. We have established some pretty hard facts. Direct embroidery is a single-step process. It is generally faster to produce. It is slightly cheaper, especially for small to medium-sized teams, because it does not require secondary application labor.
Correct.
And crucially, it is the undisputed champion of durability for daily punishing washing, because the thread is physically bonded directly into the knit. It has no edges to peel.
It's a tank.
Right? From a purely utilitarian operational standpoint, direct embroidery sounds like a total sweep. It is faster, tougher, and more efficient. So I have to ask the ultimate question here. If direct embroidery wins the mechanical and economic battle, why would any business ever choose to go through the slower, more complex two-step process of using a patch?
That is the strategic crux of this entire deep dive. And the answer has absolutely nothing to do with washing machines or unit economics or supply chain velocity.
Really? What is it then?
It all comes down to the subtle, invisible, but overwhelmingly powerful psychology of the brand signal.
The brand signal. Okay, what is a piece of thread actually saying to the person looking at it?
We have to look at how humans unconsciously decode visual information, specifically in the realm of apparel. Clothing is a language. When we see someone wearing a logo, our brain instantly categorizes their relationship to that logo based on how it is presented.
Give me an example.
Let's analyze direct embroidery through this psychological lens.
Yeah.
Because the logo is entirely flush, because it is physically integrated into the garment, and because it lacks any distinct border separating it from the hat, it reads to the human eye as institutional. It implies integration, order, and uniformity. It says this logo and this garment are one and the same.
It looks like a uniform.
Exactly. It projects clean, organized authority. That is why direct embroidery has been the absolute gold standard for decades in sectors that require instant, implicit trust and identification.
Like hospitals.
Think about healthcare settings, emergency services, hospitality, corporate logistics, and large-scale service teams. When a hospital valet or a cable technician wears a directly embroidered beanie, it signals to the customer, I am an integrated part of a cohesive, organized, professional entity. You can trust me.
And your sources point to a massive statistical reality regarding this. The vast majority of consumers actually report that branded uniform workwear makes employees significantly easier to identify and trust in the service environment.
It's proven data.
Direct embroidery achieves that identification perfectly. It clearly states the brand without screaming for attention. It doesn't look like a fashion statement. It looks like a functional piece of professional gear.
Exactly. It prioritizes clarity and authority over aesthetic flair. But what happens if you do not want to look like a uniform?
Right, what if you're a cool brand?
What if looking institutional is actually the exact opposite of what your brand is trying to achieve? That is where patches dominate, because patches carry massive, specific cultural weight.
Because patches have a deep history outside of corporate uniforms.
They do. They carry heavy semiotic associations. Think about the physical nature of a patch. It is a badge, an emblem, a distinct object attached to the wearer. Historically, who wears patches?
Scouts.
The military, astronauts, varsity athletes, motorcycle clubs. park rangers. When you use a patch, you are instantly borrowing the cultural cachet of those groups. You are signaling heritage, achievement, ruggedness, or rebellion.
Oh, man. And each type of patch fine-tunes that signal even further, doesn't it?
Precisely. Let's break down the specific signals. A traditional stitched patch with its thick layered threads and heavy marrowed border feels undeniably heritage. It feels like vintage workwear or a classic sporting goods brand from the 1950s. It signals blue-collar authenticity.
Very cool. And the woven ones?
A woven patch, with its ultra-fine microscopic thread detail and perfectly flat surface, feels precise, modern, and highly engineered. It is incredibly popular with modern tech startups, boutique software firms, and sleek outdoor equipment brands. It signals high-fidelity craftsmanship.
And then there is leather. You see a debossed leather patch on a beanie, and your brain instantly makes a leap. You don't think cable technician. You think craft coffee roastery.
Yep.
You think microbrewery. You think bespoke, handcrafted outdoor gear for hiking the Pacific Crest Trail.
Because leather is an organic, premium material. It engages the senses differently. It has a natural grain. It has thickness. It catches the light. By applying a leather patch to a knit beanie, you are elevating the physical value of the garment. You are signaling that your brand values raw materials, craftsmanship, and rugged luxury.
They're totally different.
Therefore, patches are the definitive choice for retail merchandise, lifestyle brands, streetwear lines, and high-end outdoor trades.
This highlights the critical distinction between utility and desire. If you are outfitting a staff team, people who are literally paid to wear the hat, you generally want the logo to live in the beanie. You want the uniform aesthetic.
Yes, exactly.
But if the beanie itself is the product being sold, if you want a customer to walk into your brewery and willingly hand over $35 for that hat, the psychology flips entirely.
They want the badge.
The dimensional 3D border of a patch, the premium texture of leather, the intricate detail of a woven label. These are the physical attributes that consumers feel they are paying a premium for. The patch elevates the hat from a mandatory uniform component to a desirable retail accessory.
It is the difference between internal operations and external marketing. This raises an important, overarching question for any decision maker analyzing these sources. Are you designing this garment for the employee's utility, or are you designing it for the consumer's desire?
That's the million-dollar question.
If durability, clean identification, and single-step supply chain efficiency are paramount, you must lean toward direct embroidery. But if retail desire, premium tactile feel, cultural heritage, and high-resolution artwork are paramount, you must lean toward the patch and simply accept the higher cost and the vulnerability of the attached seam.
This is where I see the biggest, most expensive mistake buyers make in this industry. They assume one method is universally, objectively better in a vacuum. I challenge you as a business operator listening right now to look critically at your own logo and your specific use case.
Don't just follow a trend.
Right. Do not just pick what looks cool on a Pinterest board.
Yeah.
Are you outfitting a busy cafe staff who are going to spill hot syrup on these beanies and throw them into a commercial washer twice a week? You need the frictionless tattoo of direct embroidery.
It's the only way.
Or are you launching a limited edition winter streetwear drop where your target demographic is going to carefully curate their outfit for Instagram? You need the 3D premium badge of a patch. The physical environment and the psychological goal must dictate the manufacturing method.
It is a framework of alignment. You align the mechanical reality with the operational need.
Okay, we have completely unpacked the mechanics. You now have the full, brand-neutral, highly technical framework to make your decision. You understand the digitizing process, push and pull compensation, and loom technology.
You know the science.
You know exactly how the physics of a washing machine attacks screen printing, respects embroidery, and threatens the seam of a patch. You understand the two-step supply chain economics, the amortization of setups, and the undeniable psychological difference between an integrated uniform and a premium retail badge.
You're armed with the cold, hard facts.
Exactly. But knowing exactly what you want is only half the battle. Because a brilliant strategy means absolutely nothing if the execution fails. Once you've made your choice, whether that is the rugged tattoo of direct embroidery or the premium badge of a woven patch, who do you actually trust to manufacture them, protect your brand's integrity, and get the boxes to your loading dock on time?
That is where the friction of the real world meets the theory of supply chain management. You need a manufacturing partner who can execute your exact vision without introducing new vulnerabilities into your business operations.
And there are a lot of vulnerabilities.
The custom apparel industry is structurally notorious for hidden hurdles that quietly bleed small businesses dry.
And this is exactly where we are going to pivot. We have spent the vast majority of our time today breaking down the objective mechanical facts of the industry. But now we want to give you our direct, sincere opinion on how to actually execute this process in the real world.
We need to talk practical application.
We are speaking directly to you, the business owner, the operations manager, the person whose budget and reputation are literally on the line when those boxes arrive. We know the excruciating pain points of ordering custom gear because we analyze them and we deal with them every single day. And that is why we want to talk plainly about Arklavo.
Let's talk about the specific friction points in the industry, starting with supply chain fragmentation. The vast majority of online promotional apparel companies are not decorators, they are brokers.
Well, this is a huge secret people don't know.
They take your order, take their margin, and then farm out the actual manufacturing to a network of third-party contract facilities. When that happens, the accountability loop is completely broken.
Right.
The person who sold you the hat is not the person who is calibrating the tension on the embroidery machine's cap frame. They are not the person checking if the digitizing file has the correct push and pull compensation for the specific knit of the beanie you chose. They are not the person inspecting the heat press temperature to ensure the adhesive on your patch won't melt off in the first wash.
They're just pushing papers.
Arklavo was engineered specifically to eliminate that fragmented supply chain.
In our honest opinion, when it comes to deciding between an embroidered beanie versus patch beanie, Arklavo is the best choice because our in-house decoration means the quality is controlled from start to finish, ensuring your logo looks perfect.
The operational value of in-house decoration really cannot be overstated because Arklavo handles direct embroidery, direct-to-garment printing, and heat press applications entirely under their own roof. The feedback loop between your digital proof and the physical manufacturing floor is closed.
They're talking to each other.
The technicians operating the machines are directly accountable to the quality control standards of the company you place the order with. They monitor the thread tension, they monitor the stitch density, and they visually inspect the perimeter seam of every patch. That vertical integration drastically reduces the variance in quality that plagues outsourced apparel runs.
And let's address the absolute biggest, most frustrating headache for small and medium-sized teams, minimum order quantities, or MOQs. Let's say you run a boutique architectural firm. You have a highly specialized team of 6 people. You just want 6 incredible, high-quality, perfectly decorated beanies to keep them warm on site visits.
It shouldn't be hard.
If you go to a standard bulk apparel supplier, they will either flat out refuse your business or they will force you to buy 48 hats, tying up your precious operational capital in useless inventory sitting in a closet. It is an archaic business model that punishes small teams. Not here. If you are weighing an embroidered beanie versus patch beanie, Arklavo is the provider we put at the top because we require no order minimums and have a real person checking every single order.
Eliminating minimum order quantities fundamentally changes how a business can manage its apparel operations. You no longer have to compromise your brand standards or settle for cheaper decoration methods just to hit an arbitrary quota set by a broker.
It's so freeing.
You buy exactly what your operations dictate. If you hire one new employee, you can order exactly one beanie to match the rest of the team. If you are doing a massive corporate rebrand, you can order 1,000. It provides absolute scalability without the inventory risk.
And you do not have to guess what the final product will look like, which is terrifying when you are spending company money. Arklavo provides a free digital design proof before a single needle fires or a single patch is pressed.
Peace of mind.
You get to see exactly how your specific unique logo translates to the digitized stitch file for embroidery. You see the thread paths, or you see exactly how it looks mocked up as a woven patch on the exact color beanie you selected. You review the translation of your brand before you commit a single dollar of your budget.
And that's how it should be.
Plus, the logistics are clean. Orders typically ship fast, usually in about 2 business days, with free shipping on orders over $150. It is simply a smoother, more transparent, vertically integrated way to handle your brand's physical presence.
If we pull back and connect all of this mechanical and economic detail to the larger strategic picture, I want you to think about the absolute very first impression a customer has. Think about the moment they walk into your facility, or the moment they see your field team stepping out of a truck on a freezing, dark morning. That beanie they are wearing is not just a piece of acrylic fabric designed to trap body heat. It is a moving, breathing billboard.
He really is.
It is the absolute front line of your brand's silent communication with the world. Every single microscopic stitch, the presence or absence of a border, the texture of the material, the crispness of the lettering, all of those tiny physical details are speaking volumes to your customer before your employee even has the chance to say hello. It broadcasts your attention to detail, your level of professionalism, and the value you place on your own identity.
It is a massive responsibility for a small piece of fabric. Are you sending the right signal? It is a question worth asking yourself as you look at your team out there in the field today.
It is the ultimate question of physical branding in the real world. You have to get it right.
Well, that gives you plenty to strategize over as you prepare to make your next apparel decision. We have given you the mechanics, the economics, and the psychology. The rest is up to you. This episode was produced with AI narration by the Arklavo team.